Because I'm going to be talking about this, right? So before I asked you to join the meeting, I was asking if you one person, and I was asking if you've all seen a palm tree before. Sometimes you have these little plants growing on the stem of a palm tree aside the palm itself. Opening tree. Has anybody seen something like that before?
No.
Or you take a look at certain leaves and then you find some black spots or dots under the leaf. Have you ever observed something like that before?
Yes, please.
Good. So if you've ever seen something like that before, then you might have probably seen a fern. But how do you confirm it? That's what we are going to be going to today. So as I was saying before, the fern is a member of vascular plants. When I say vascular plants, these plants are plants that have certain tissues responsible for the conduction of water, mineral salts, and food. These are the plants, right? So you could have the xylem responsible for the conduction of water and mineral salts, and you have the phloem, which is responsible for the conduction of food substances in the form of nutrients and organic products. Hope we are clear. So these plants have no seeds, so they reproduce via spores and they are flowerless, right? These plants are flowerless. So because of their structure, they have diverse habitats. You find them in dry areas, you find them in cold places, find them in damp areas, warm areas. They have vast area, they have vast areas to which you can find these plants, right? And some common examples are Nephrolepis. Can you see my screen and my cursor? Nephrolepis and Platycerium. Those are the common examples of the fern. Are we good?
Yes, please.
Okay. So moving on. The ferns have
Yes,
another term known as the rhizome, which has some thin roots which we call the adventitious roots, right? Hope you know what a rhizome is from GHS, the types of underground stems. You know them, right? Can you mention another example of the underground stem aside the rhizome? Can you mention an example of an underground stem aside the rhizome? I can't hear you. Okay. So let me move on. So some other forms of underground stems, you can have the combs, you can have the bulbs.
Yeah.
Then you can have, yes, it's an example, but it is not an underground stem. It's an example of an underground stem, but it is not another like a particular type of underground stem. You get me? Good. So you have the rhizome. Yes. So you have the rhizome of the fern. And then on this, instead of you to find roots, you rather have adventitious roots. Now, these adventitious roots are seen in nature. Most of the time, sometimes it could be like just one cell thing. So we have these adventitious roots that help the conduction of water, mineral salts, and organic compounds from the environment into the plants and vice versa. You get it. So with this adventitious roots, the ferns use this in water and mineral salt absorption. So now you have the rhizome, and on the rhizome you have the adventitious roots. Now the rhizome will give rise to a shoot, right? And this shoot is what we call the frond, right? So now the frond is compound in nature. And when I say compound, you know what a compound leaf is, right? So compound leaves is divided into several leaflets. So we have one whole leaf, which is divided into smaller leaflets. That makes it compound in nature. So you have the frond being compound in nature, and then at maturity, the underside of the leaflets develop what we call sporangia or spores, right? So there is sporangia underneath the leaflets at maturity. Now, a cluster of sporangia is what we call the sori or singular soles. So you find this underneath the leaves. I'll show you a picture very soon. You find this underneath each of the leaflets of the fern. Right, so you have a cluster of sporangia called the sori, and then the sporangia produces the spores. So at maturity, the spores are formed. Can we get this? So now, this cluster of sporangia you have, which we are calling the sori, has a protective structure, which is known as the indusium, right? And so the plural will be indusia. So this structure protects the sporangia, protects it from exposure to the environment, right? And then it also helps in dispersal as well of the spores during maturity. So now let's take a look at the diagram below. Hope you can all see my screen. And if you have any questions, I'll be willing to answer them. Any questions? Did we get it to this point? Okay, so I'm moving on. Right. So now let's take a look at the picture of the fish. So now you have this whole thing from the top to the bottom is what we are calling the frond, right? This part here is the rhizome, and these structures you can see here is the adventitious roots. So if you take this part here from this last leaflet to the top, where you can find the leaves, it's called the blade, right? And then the stalk below the blade is known as the stalk. The stalk which bears the leaflet is known as the rachis. The stalk within the blade is the rachis, and the stalk outside of the blade is the stalk. Then if you take one of the leaflets, it's known as the pinna. Then the sub leaflets, the smaller ones, are known as the pinnules. Do we get this? So you have here the blade, the style, the rachis, and then this part is the rhizome, then you have the root. So if you have a new frond being formed, right, it's mostly coiled and it's known as the fiddlehead or the cosiac. Do you get it? So this is just a general overview of diagram of what the film looks like. Any questions?
No, sir.
All right. So we are okay with the diagram of the pen, right? And if we see it, we can draw it. Okay. So I'm moving on. So there's a diagram of the pen. We'll see more diagrams later, and we'll be fine with that. Okay. So if you take a look at a pen in real life, this is what you see. You can see those dots under the leaflets. What did I say those dots are? Those black dots. What did I say they are? What was their name? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody unmute and tell me what I said those dots are? Anybody? Your contributions are also necessary, so please unmute and speak. So I know I'm not teaching myself, but you're also understanding what I'm saying. Okay. So I said the dots are known as sporangia, and a cluster of dots put together is known as a sorus or sori, and then that is protected by a structure known as the industrium. Please note these things very well because they are important and you'll be asked afterwards. Okay, I'm moving on. So that is with its structure. You should know this about the structure. Then another important thing we'll be looking at is its reproduction. Okay, so for the reproduction, the ferns undergo 2 generations of life cycle, right, which is referred to as the alternative generation. So this form of life cycle is, it goes in between a diploid and haploid phase, right? It alternates between a haploid and diploid phase. Now, if I talk about haploid and diploid phase, what am I trying to talk about? Talking about the sets of chromosomes. So there'll be one point in time where it will have the full set, meaning 2 sets of chromosomes, or 2N, and then at a point in time, it will have just 1 set, which is the N. So it's an alternation between the diploid and the haploid phases. We are going to be taking a look at that with the introduction. So take note of this. First undergo alternate generation, right? And then it's a switch between the haploid and diploid phase. Take note of that. So within the sporangia, as I said before, the sporangia is responsible for developing the spores. So within the sporangia, the spores develop, and then at maturity, they are dispersed such that they fall on suitable substrate. Then they germinate to form a new fern. Okay. So now, how does this dispersal occur? When the spores are mature enough and it's ready to be dispersed, the protective structure, which I'm calling the inducium, would shrink. Now, when it shrinks, there's tension being built within the sporangia because the walls of the sporangia will dry up. So the inducium would shrink and then expose the walls of the sporangia. Then that would dry up. And when it dries up, there will be tension being built within the sporangia on a strip of cells known as the annulus, right? So as this tension is being built, it causes the whole structure to curl backwards and rupture violently, which exposes all the spores or disperses the spores. So now let me show you a diagram of everything I'm trying to talk about. So this is an example of it. So can you all see diagram B over here? Can we see diagram B?
Yeah.
Okay. So taking a look at diagram B, you can see this part my cursor is pointing to.
You can see.
This part is what I'm calling the inducium, right? So what happens is that this, during maturation, this would shrink. So when it shrinks, now it exposes the sporangia. This you are seeing here are the sporangia. And I told you a cluster of sporangia is known as a sorus. So this you are seeing here as a whole is the sorus. Now, when they are mature enough and ready to get dispersed, this will shrink off. And now when it shrinks off, it exposes the sporangia, the walls of the sporangia. So now the walls of the sporangia get dry. And when it dries off, tension will build. So as you can see in diagram D, the tension builds and then it forces the spores to get dispersed, as you can see in this structure here. Can we all see that? So I take it again. The induction shrinks, exposes the sporangial walls. The sporangial walls dry up, tension builds, then the spores are released. Okay. So now as the spores are released, when the conditions are favorable, they fall on a new substrate and then develop into a fern. But how? So under favorable conditions, the spores will germinate into a heart-shaped structure, which is green. It's known as the prothallus, right? So you have, I have the diagram of the prothallus right here. This is a diagram of the prothallus. Hope you can all see that.
Yes.
So this is okay. So at maturation, okay, can you all see now? So as I was saying before, the everything cuts. I was saying that the spores will develop into a green heart-shaped structure known as the prothallus. Now the prothallus bears both the female and the male reproductive organs, right? So in these structures, the male is known as the antheridia, singular antheridium, and then the female is achigonia, and then the singular is achigonium. Please let's note these terms, right? So because these structures or the prothallus bears both the male and the female structures on itself is known as the gametophytic stage or the gametophyte, right? It has gametes, right? These phytes mostly refer to like structures. So gametophyte, it bears the gametes, right? The female and the male gametes. So this is the gametophytic stage. Note the names, gametophytes, the prothallus bears the antheridia and achigonia. Okay. So the achigonia is on the underside of the prothallus, right? So if it's ready to produce a new a new fern, what happens is that there is sperm being released from the male organ, which is known as the antheridium. And this sperm is flagellated. It's flagellated, so it can be able to swim towards the achigonium. But it can't be able to do the swimming alone. So it does it in a thin film of water, right? That is on the surface of the prothallus. So it swims towards the achigonia, fuses with the ovums within the achigonium, and then forms a zygote, right? So this zygote will then develop into a similar fern plant. So that's how ferns reproduce. So they grow, develop sporangia on the underside of the leaf. When it's time for a new fern to be formed, what happens is that the inducium shrinks, exposes the sporangial walls to the environment. The sporangial walls would also shrink, build up tension in a strip of cells known as the annulus, which will cause the forced dispersal of the spores. Now, the spores under suitable conditions will fall on a substrate and develop into what we call a prothallus, which is a green heart-shaped structure. This structure is a gametophytic stage or a gametophyte. Why? Because it bears the male and the female reproductive organs, known as the antheridia and achigonia, respectively. The achigonia is on the underside of the prothallus. When the reproduction becomes favorable, what happens is that sperm is released from the antheridia, which goes into the achigonium, fuses with the ovum to form a zygote. The zygote then develops into a fern. But note that these sperms that are produced, one, they are flagellated to aid movement, and this movement is done in a thin film of water. Hope we are clear on this. So this is a diagram to explain that. So as we said, it's an alternate generation, right? A switch between the haploid and diploid stages. So if you go into details, when they ask you what alternation of generation is, it is a form or a life cycle, a reproductive life cycle in some plants, which demonstrates an alternation between a haploid gametophytic stage and a diploid sporophytic stage. So haploid is for the gametophytes because most of the time gametes have just one set of chromosomes. Do we get it? Then the mature sporophytes would have the two sets because you have one set coming from the female, one set coming from the male, coming together to give you the full 2N. Do we get it? So this explains the alternation of generation. So what happens? Let's start from the sporophyte stage. You have a mature sporophyte, which you are calling the Fern, maybe an example, Platystereum, or even Nephrolepis. So we know the whole thing. The spores are released during maturation. I've talked about the mechanism. I don't have to go through it again. Spores are released. They fall on a suitable substrate. So throughout this stage, all these are the sporophytic stages, which are diploid in nature. So meaning they have the two sets of chromosomes. So if, let's say, I tell you the Fern, I'm not saying this is true, but the Fern has, let's say, a chromosome set of 46, right? If you divide 46 into 2, that's 23. So let's say it has 2N. So 2N would be 46. So meaning its sporophytic stage has 2N, which is 46 chromosomes. But if it gets to the gametophytic stage, it's going to be N. So you are going to divide this 46 by 2 to give you 23. So meaning at the gametophytic stage, the set of chromosomes you are going to have will be halved. You get it? This can be a question that can be asked in exam, so take note. So where you have the mature Fern, the spore releasing stage, all that, it's a diploid stage, but it is a sporophyte. Sporophyte because it produces spores, and gametophyte because that is the gamete stage. So the spores will land on a suitable substrate, develop the prothallus. Prothallus has the antheridia and archegonia, right? And then there's the fusion of the male and female sex cells, should I say, and then forms the zygote. Now this zygote would be 2N. I've already explained why, because it's taking 1N from the male, 1N from the female, put together to give you 2N. You get it? So this is a perfect diagram of the alternation of generation. Some say alternate generation, that's also correct, right? Any questions so far? You can put the questions in the comment section. I'll answer you. Any questions? You can unmute and talk. Any questions? Else I'll move on.
Sir.
Do you have a question?
Sir.
Yes, I'm listening. Talk.
Hello, sir.
I'm listening. Talk.
Sir.
Timothy, you can go on.
Sir, please. I came late a bit. When I was connecting, I couldn't connect me. So
Okay,
I wanted to go over from when you started.
The recorded session provided. I can't go over because of time. So I think the recorded session will be provided. But you can feel free to ask any questions on the page. When I see it, I'll answer it. Okay.
Sir, please, okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Seems there are no other questions. So That's all you need to know about ferns. That's all. Okay, so let me go over one more time. Where did you say you joined from? So that I take that part, then you understand it. Then I can end the meeting.
That be from the diagram.
Which diagram? I'm scrolling, so tell me. Which part? Here. This diagram.
Yes, I didn't get this part.
Okay, so I was talking about the
Yes, I
reproduction.
didn't get it.
I was talking about the reproduction of a fern, right? So I'm calling the mature fern a sporophyte because it is a structure that bears spores, right? So you have the mature fern and wants to reproduce. What happens? It releases spores, right? And I've talked about how the spores are released already, so I don't have to go through it again. It releases the spores from its sporangia or sporangium, right? Then the spores land on a suitable substrate. When they land on a suitable substrate, so I've moved from here, mature spore, it has released the spores. Then here it lands on a suitable substrate and begins to develop into a young gametophyte. This gametophyte is known as the prothallus, right? So this prothallus is green and heart-shaped in nature, right? So it bears the male and female organs, which is known as the male is the antheridium, and then the female is the archegonium, right? So because it has these gametes on it, that is the reason it's known as the gametophyte, right? So now we want to make it. So you have the male organ releasing sperm cells to go and meet that of the archegonium, which has the egg cells or the ovum, right? So the as I said before, the archegonia on the underside of the prothallus. So the male sex cells released are flagellated, meaning they have a fin, which helps them to swim. And this swimming is done in a thin film of water. So it goes to the underside, fuses with the female sex cells of the archegonia, and then new fern is produced, right? Develops into a zygote, then a zygote grows into a sporophyte, and that's basically how the fern is formed. Do we get it? So as I was saying, it's an alternation of generation. So where you have the young sporophyte, or even from the zygote stage, growing into a mature sporophyte to the point where it releases the spores, that part is diploid in nature. It means the plant has the full set of chromosomes, right? So if maybe, for instance, in humans, we have 46 chromosomes. So if we say the plant had 46, meaning at its sporophytic stage, it had 46 chromosomes. But at the point where it is trying to reproduce, right? The point where it's trying to reproduce, where it's releasing the spores, falling on substrate and all that, that part, because it's going to split into gametes, the number of chromosomes will be halved. So you have just, if it were a human, it will have just 23. So at the gametophytic stage, it will be just 23 chromosomes. We get this. So 23 chromosomes. That's why I say it's an alternation of generation. So it switches between a haploid gametophytic stage, where I said haploid means one set of the chromosome, one set of chromosomes, and then a diploid sporophytic stage. So diploid meaning it has the two sets of chromosomes and it's sporophytic in nature. So just take the words how they are and try to understand them. Haploid gametophytic, meaning one set of chromosomes that bears gametes, gametophytic, and then diploid, two sets of chromosomes that is sporophytic, meaning ability to produce spores. So that's the explanation of generation. That's what we need to know about the ferns. And one interesting fact I asked.
Please, thank you.
You are welcome. So one interesting thing I said was that you can find these ferns growing on other plants, right? This this nature is known as epiphytism. Epiphytism, right? The ability of one plant to grow on another. So you could see ferns being classified as epiphytes later in the course when you take the course actually. So note that. So plants belong to class Polydiopsida and phylum Phyllosynophyta, but some can be epiphytic in nature, meaning they can grow on other plants. So they'll use the rhizome, which bears the adventitious roots to tap nutrients from the plants on which they are on to develop themselves. Hope we are clear on this. Any other questions?
Yes, so please, you're saying that plants that grow on other plants are known as the
Epiphytes.
plants.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that all you wanted to know?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Another question.
Yeah, I'm listening.
How long does it take for a fern to germinate?
How long does it
Take for a fern to germinate?
Okay. Well, it depends because there are different species of ferns. It depends. Some can sprout in like a week to 3 weeks. So it depends, right? There's no fixed time for a fern to sprout. It depends on the type of fern, right? So you can have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months, because there are some of the ferns that can grow into actual trees, like they look like trees and stuff. So it depends on the species and everything. So it depends. There's no fixed time. Any other questions? We have 5 minutes to end the class.
Okay.
Let the questions flow and then we can end everything. Any other questions? You can put them in the chat section or read it out and everything. Okay, so it seems we don't have any questions. So as we were having a class, I recorded, so you have the recorded sessions posted for you, and then you have the material as well. So please take note of everything I've said today. Everything I've mentioned is very important. That's the most you'll be asked about the fern. So if you have biology practicals data during the course and then you are asked to identify these plants, the very first thing you should do is to look on the underside of the leaves. First thing, you find some black dots. Once you see that, you know that, okay, this is a fern I'm dealing with. Then you can know its features. You know the classes. You know it belongs to class Polydiopsida, phylum Phyllosynophyta, easy. Then you are good to go. You know it undergoes alternation of generation. If you are asked questions concerning that, I have explained that you can understand it. I've told you the structure, the fact that it bears the xylem and phloem and everything. So yeah, I'll be ending today's class here. Thank you all for joining, and I encourage you to keep studying and keep reading. All right, thank you very much for your time, and we'll meet each other same time next week.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, sir.